peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. It is exactly 3 p.m. here in Nairobi, East Africa. And thank you so much for joining us. This is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news making headlines across the continent. Earlier on in the morning, we had conversations that revolved around Kenya, the COVID-19 situation, and also the Kenya newspaper reviews. And we had so much to talk about. If you missed that, just go back to our page there, and you'll find the morning show, and you can bring yourself up to date. So a lot of things have been happening. I trust that you had a wonderful weekend. Today, the 31st of August, the last day of August, as we look forward to a new month starting tomorrow. And a lot of things have happened since the last time we were here having some conversations. There has been some new developments, and so we have a lot to catch up with. And so let's just get into it. My name is Miriam Gutu, and a very warm welcome to you. And now we start with Rwanda. And the man whose role in saving people from the 1994 genocide was celebrated in the film Hotel Rwanda is being held in Rwanda on terror charges. Paul Rusesabagina was arrested abroad, where he had been living in exile. The Rwandan Investigation Bureau says he was arrested on an international warrant for forming and leading terrorist movements operating in the region. Mr. Rusesabagina, who is 66 years old, was awarded the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005, among other human rights awards. He has not commented on the current charges, but has long been a critic of a Rwandan government, and in 2011 he was accused of funding subversion in Rwanda, but no charges were brought. At the time, Mr. Rusesabagina denied the accusations and said there was a smear campaign against him. In 2004, film Hotel Rwanda told the story of how Mr. Rusesabagina, a middle-class Hutu married to a Tutsi, used his influence and bribes to convince military officials to secure a safe escape for the estimated 1,200 people who sought shelter at the Mill Hotel in Kigali. And then we go to Congo Brazzaville, where the country's jailed opposition leader Jean-Marie Mokoko has returned to the country a month after he was taken for treatment in Turkey's capital, Ankara. Mokoko was having 20-year jail term when he became sick and was flown to Ankara. His lawyer Yvonne Eric Ibwonga told AFP news agencies that he was allowed to see the politician after he returned to the country and that he was in good condition. The lawyer said they were working on a request for him to be freed. Mokoko was charged with undermining state security and illegal possession of weapons and ammunition, and imprisoned in 2019. The former chief of staff of the armed forces finished third term in the 2016 presidential elections against President Denis Sassou Nguesso. Of course, won a controversial win there and was declared a winner. We go to Sudan, where Sudan transitional government and rebel groups are expected to sign a peace deal agreement today to end 17 years of conflict despite boycotts by some movements during the negotiations. The talks have been taking place in South Sudan's capital, Juba, and involved rebel groups operating in Darfur, Blue Nile, and South Kordofan regions. Fighting between government forces and the rebels started in 2003 and has left hundreds of thousands of people dead. Millions have been forced from their homes. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok arrived in Juba on Sunday afternoon and met with leaders of the rebel groups ahead of the formal signing ceremony. The leader of Sudan's Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah, is expected to join Mr. Hamdok and South Sudan's President Salva Kiir at the ceremony. And we move to Ghana, where Ghana will resume international passenger flights on 1st of September. That is tomorrow. President Nana Akufo-Addo announced on Sunday, citing a drop in active coronavirus cases. Air, land and sea borders were closed in March to prevent the spread of the virus. President Akufo-Addo said all travelers arriving in Ghana must present proof of negative COVID-19 test result done within 72 hours before departure. They will also be tested on arrival at the airport, with the result expected within 30 minutes. The passengers will be required to pay for the test. And then we go to South Africa, and South Africa's governing party officials have said President Cyril Ramaphosa will appear before an integrity commission to answer questions about a controversial campaign donation. But Jesse Duarte, a senior member of the African National Congress, did not specify when Mr. Ramaphosa would present himself before the party panel. In a report, South Africa's anti-corruption watchdog alleged that Mr. Ramaphosa had misled Parliament about money he received in 2007, worth more than $36,000. Mr. Ramaphosa maintains it was a donation towards his campaign for the ANC leadership. As president, Mr. Ramaphosa has staked his reputation on cleaning up South Africa's politics since he replaced former President Jacob Zuma, who right now is facing also some serious corruption charges there in South Africa. And then we go to Ivory Coast, where at least 36 candidates are expected to be registered by the end of the day for the presidential race. If all applications are submitted to the Independent Electoral Commission in that country, opposition leaders Pascal Affi-N'Guessan of Ivorian Popular Front and Henry Konan Bedi of the opposition Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire had earlier submitted their candidacy last Thursday. Political icons Laurent Gbagbo and Guillermo Soro are also expected to file in their candidacy despite being struck off the electoral body and having lost their civil rights. Outgoing President Alassane Ouattara was the first to submit his applications last Monday, with the signatures of 1 million citizens a condition for eligibility to contest for the presidency. Ivorian voters are expected to go to the polls on October 31st, 2020, the constitutional deadline to elect a new president. And then we head over to Mali, where the June opposition movement that saw numerous Malian citizens in the streets of Bamako calling for the resignation of now ousted ex-President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta proposed a transition back to civilian power between 18 to 24 months to the military coup leaders who ousted him. Issakou Jim, the strategy committee member, spoke to the press saying that the army is for the people and by the people, so their inclusivity was very understood, but it was good to create a framework for consultation. The Economic Community of West African States, that is the ECOWAS, has already threatened to immediate sanctions only to be lifted upon the National Committee for the Salvation of the People junta carrying out a successful transition within a year. And we go to Malawi, where Malawi President Lazarus Chakwera has asked men in Malawi to strictly follow the COVID-19 preventative measures. In his weekly national address on Saturday, Chakwera said government statistics indicate that more men in the country are indeed infected with the virus than men. Chakwera said this is largely because of the reckless behavior of many men in Malawi in observing measures aimed at stopping the spread of COVID-19. President Chakwera said such an attitude defeats efforts to combat the spread of the coronavirus, and Chakwera said he is deeply concerned that most men in Malawi feel they are very strong and cannot contract COVID-19. Okay, I don't know about strong and cannot contract. I don't know if they're watching any news from outside Africa where people are really dying. And even a country like South Africa has seen a lot of people dying there. I think this morning they had recorded over 13,000 deaths so far. It is the leading country in Africa in terms of the deaths and also the infections there. So these men in Malawi who believe they're very strong, so they cannot contract COVID-19, they better start wearing those masks. And I think we had a similar story on one of our newspapers here, and when I'm through with this, I will make some reference there, and we see what the Minister of Health here in Kenya is saying in regards to, even in Kenya here, we have a bigger percentage of the numbers that have been confirmed are positive for COVID-19 being men. So there has to be something that is really not adding up. All right. And we go to Nigeria, where the Ghanaian Minister of Information, Kojo Nkrumah, on Sunday defended the $1 million trade levy and other regulations imposed on Nigerian traders in Ghana, noting that Nigeria had equally issued executive orders preventing foreigners from getting jobs which Nigerians can do. Now, the minister said it was astonishing that Ghanaian laws could be described as outrageous, noting that it was on record that Nigeria had taken a number of steps in pursuit of its international interests. He cited the closure of the Seme-Krake border since August 2019 as part of steps taken by the federal government, which he said had affected the neighboring countries. Now, Nkrumah accused Nigerian traders in Ghana of gross violations of retail trade laws, including tax evasion, immigration offences and selling substandard products. Nkrumah stated this in a reaction to a statement by the Minister of Information and Culture in Nigeria, Mr. Lai Mohammed, that the federal government will no longer condone the reported harassment of Nigerians in the former Gold Coast. And now Mr. Nkrumah said, contrary to Mohammed's claim that 825 Nigerians were deported between January 2018 and February 2019, only 700 Nigerians were involved in fraud, prostitution, and armed robbery. Those are the only people who are deported from Ghana there. This tiff between Nigeria and Ghana, I don't think it will be going away very, very soon. There has been some simmering tensions after a couple of times in the past there. Nigerian traders have been harassed and their shops closed there in Ghana. And according to Ghanaian laws there, it says that any business that you intend to do in that country, if you're a foreigner, then it must at least worth 1 million. That is the least capital you're supposed to inject in that economy if you were to start any kind of business. And this goes against some of the agreements that they have there in ECOWAS that allows free movement of goods, free trade, and member states in ECOWAS should be enjoying certain privileges that now apparently Nigerians cannot enjoy in Ghana. So that is something that I have been waiting to hear ECOWAS, come out and speak strongly about. But as usual, they haven't said much about it really. And then we go to Tanzania, and Tanzanian presidential candidate Tundu Lissu has raised concerns over rampant disqualifications suffered by opposition parties. He disclosed that about 1,020 Chadema councillorship aspirants were disqualified out of the 3,754 candidates, their cars and other benefits. Some of these things that are happening there in Tanzania, it's quite worrying. The stories you never expected would be coming out of Tanzania. But since the presidency of President Pombe Magufuli there has been a lot in regards to, politics and other rights and media, freedom, and a lot of things have been happening there, targeted, attacks against the opposition, and now some of these claims that the opposition leader, the lead contender there against President Magufuli in the upcoming elections then the 28th of October. And these are very weighty matters, and I know Tanzania, we've known it as a very peaceful, place, and that's why it's really a wonder when you hear the things and the news coming out of Tanzania as it is. And according to the new media laws that were passed a couple of weeks ago, even the freedom of media there is really under attack. And I know they've targeted a few media houses, especially the ones with a link to Kenya there in the past, even closing them down for a while. And so right now the new media laws there says that any Tanzanian media house cannot run even any foreign content, be it BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, these major worldwide news stations there, or any other international news, international media cannot run in Tanzania without first getting consent from the Tanzanian government. So I don't know what they'll be doing about these cable televisions, the ones you pay, like DSTV or any other cable, service that you pay that comes with a host of other channels from across the world. A lot of them usually out of the country, like we see here in Kenya, and I think we share the same in terms of DSTV and other services, cable and services that we receive not only here in Kenya, it's shared around East Africa. And so I don't know how President Magufuli intends to control, even these cable news networks and other international media not to be viewed or not to be received there in Tanzania. This is very serious, and I don't know. It's not very good there, what is happening. President Magufuli, come on now. Okay, we go to Sudan, and on Saturday, Sudan on Saturday called for raising the negotiation on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam from the ministerial level to the level of heads of state. Sudanese Irrigation and Water Resources Minister Yasir Abbas said the negotiation must be raised from the level of ministers to the level of presidents of the three countries through the African Union in order to provide political support for the negotiations, adding that the continuation of the negotiations in the current form will not be very effective. Now, we've seen that for ourselves. Reaching a deal in Nile Dam talks needs a decision from the highest political leadership in the three countries, Abbas explained. Now, Sudan, Egypt and Ethiopia on Friday concluded their latest round of dam talks without reaching consensus over a draft deal regarding the Great Renaissance Dam that should have been submitted to the African Union on Friday. And then we go to Somalia, where a new Somalia media law meant to enforce professionalism and safeguard the country's state secrets from enemies in courts has been met with a wide-ranging criticism for criminalizing journalism. Last week, Somalia's President Mohamed Farmajo assented to the media bill, an amendment from a controversial 2016 law which had been seen by players as retrogressive. Now, Farmajo's spokesperson Abdi Nur Mohammed declared a victory for press freedom and suggested the new law will enforce some sort of patriotism among journalists, professionalize the industry, as well as weed out quacks working for foreign entities. Okay, so we see where this is going. And he was referring to a case in which Mogadishu sued Nairobi at the International Court of Justice at The Hague in the Netherlands, but he did not clarify his assertions of bias. The case will be heard next year, of course, because the maritime case between Kenya and Somalia. Now, the media law, in the meantime, will enable journalists to report on public officers without fear of reprisals, Mohammed said, as long as the coverage is rightful. In quotes, but media lobbies in Somalia and outside the country are pushing against the clauses that could cancel all existing licenses for private media and journalists from a new type of accreditation, such as punitive. Lobbies argue that there is no guarantee of successful registration, given accrediting agencies are yet to be set up, and those seen as critical may be denied registration. And also, that new clause that has been included in this new media bill includes a clause that now will mandate journalists to reveal their sources. And if you know anything about journalism, you should protect your sources by any means necessary. So if now the bill there in Somalia will compel you to reveal your sources, then that really will undermine, a professional journalism culture there in Somalia. And even for the government to think this new media will cultivate patriotism, professionalism, and I don't know what else they're saying, it doesn't work like that at all. All right, we go to South Sudan, where the Economic Crisis Management Committee has summoned the Director General of the Traffic Police Department over years of unaccounted revenues. This is part of ongoing investigations by the new committee formed by President Salva Kiir, tasked with managing the current economic situation. It is headed by the Vice President of Economics Cluster, Dr. James Wani Iga. In its first two meetings, The committee resolved, among other things, to investigate exemptions on imports and trail unaccounted monies by the country's revenue-generating institutions. The Traffic Police Department, headed by Major General John Nakoti, is one of the institutions that generate money for the government. Speaking on the state-owned SSBC TV on Saturday, Abraham Cole, the secretary of the committee, says for years the Traffic Police headquarters has not accounted for revenues it has been generating, and of course, I think the police force there in South Sudan is rated among the top corrupt institutions there in South Sudan. And we know South Sudan is the second most corrupt country after Somalia. Somalia is the most, and then South Sudan comes in second there. So a lot of things are happening there, especially in regards to the police force. And this is not the first time this matter is actually coming up. And then we end with Zimbabwe, where President Emmerson Mnangagwa's ruling party has dismissed as rubbish a statement by Western diplomats warning Zimbabwe's government not to use the COVID-19 pandemic as a pretext to stifle citizens' rights. The statement was delivered while more than a dozen citizens are in hiding for fear of prosecution for organizing an anti-protest government protest. 7 countries, including the U.S., have urged President Mnangagwa to keep the inauguration pledge he made in 2018 to respect human rights. Now, Western diplomats joined forces in a statement saying their countries would continue to assist Zimbabwe in addressing the humanitarian crisis caused by recurring droughts and the COVID-19 pandemic. So they're saying, as much as we do not like a lot of things there that you're doing, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, but still, for the sake of the great people of Zimbabwe, we shall continue extending, some help there that the people really, really need there in Zimbabwe. So this story you've done here on Malawi, where President Lazarus Chakwera is really worried about the high numbers there of COVID-19, and in men contribute to the highest number of COVID-19 there. And one of the things that President Chakwera is said that this is largely because of the reckless behavior of many men in Malawi in observing measures aimed at stopping the spread of COVID-19. President Chakwera said such an attitude defeats efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. I don't have the figures here with me, but I had them a while ago, and perhaps I'll bring you that tomorrow. But there was a piece about the same on today's Daily Nation here in Kenya, one of the leading newspapers in the country, and on page 7 of that, I think they carried out a new case study because even in Kenya here, a huge percent, in Malawi, I think it's 66% is men. 66% of the COVID-19 cases that have been reported there, 66% of them are men. And in Kenya, we also have high numbers. So let me just read a part of that story. It says, concern has been raised over the gender factor as more men still dominate the numbers of those most affected by COVID-19. The oddity has been difficult to explain even among scientists. However, the first study to look at immune response to coronavirus by sex has turned up a clue. The findings, published on Wednesday in Nature Journal, reveals that men produce a weaker immune response to the virus than women. Oh, really? Okay, this is interesting. Now, the research suggests that men, particularly those aged above 60 years, may need to depend more on vaccines to protect against the infection. It stated that overall women's bodies produce more T cells, which can kill virus infected cells and stop the infection from spreading. Men showed much weaker activation of T cells, and the lag was linked to how sick they became. Now, the older the men, the weaker their T cell responses. That is quite, I don't know if you understand anything. Well, I'll go Google what T cells are. I remember, but I can't give a clear explanation. But in case you're wondering, and you've been wondering like me, then perhaps that will help you understand why we see a higher number of cases there being from men. So anyway, these chaos that are looming there in Ivory Coast after, former President Laurent Gbagbo insisted he's running, and Guillaume Soro also there is running, and they've been struck out from the ballot by the Ivory Coast Electoral Commission. They've been disqualified due to that case that they were facing at the ICC, and they have been acquitted. Of course, Babo is still being held in Europe there. He's not been allowed to come, but he will. And so he's been wanting to run again for these elections. Remember, Alassane Ouattara replaced him there in 2010 after those elections turned to be very, very chaotic. Gbagbo won. Ouattara won, and Gbagbo did not want to leave power. So he was arrested after the chaos, that the post-election violence that saw a lot of people being killed there. And then now he was acquitted, and he wants to come back and run again. If I were him, I will not even bother to put myself through that again. And the Electoral Commission there in Ivory Coast said no, due to some of those very serious, cases that you are facing at the ICC. Forget the fact that he was acquitted, but the Electoral Commission there in Ivory Coast is saying, no, you can't come back here and run. But their supporters, matter of fact, went there, I think, last week and tried to submit their names by force, even going against what the Electoral Commission there. I don't know if they even registered them. So today marks the end of, any presidential hopeful to give their names to be considered for the October 31st poll. Tanzania is going to its elections on October 28th. Ivory Coast is holding its elections in October 31st. And so let's see how this will play out. I think this is very dangerous, and they're setting up, they might be taking back Ivory Coast 10 years back, where the country almost was on a brink of a civil war, but things were able to be contained very fast. So it was not as serious, but a couple of lives were lost, so that counts for something. And so Gbagbo, faced those charges there at the ICC, which I've said there he was acquitted, and now he's back and he says, I want to run for these elections, and they have refused him to run, together with Julian Soro there, who also insists that he wants to be a candidate in this year's elections. And Mr. Ouattara, now this is where it is very controversial. Mr. Ouattara's term ends this year, and that is according to Ivory Coast Constitution. He's supposed to do 2 terms, 5 years each, but Ouattara has said, no, I think I'll run again for the 3rd term. And he is running again because the prime minister that he had chosen to fly, the party's candidature passed, I think, about 2 months ago in France. And then now Mr. Ouattara looked around and decided, I think that I will run myself. And so the party, he was declared the flag bearer again, and that is against the Ivory Coast, constitution there. He's not supposed to be running for that term. So let's just wait and see what will happen. But this is not good at all there, this story in Ivory Coast. We shall be, following this up for you. And in Mali also, new developments. Remember the group that was leading those protests that were calling out for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta to resign there a couple of months ago, that led to him being removed by the army about 2 weeks ago. Now this movement, the June opposition movement, have come out and said that they proposed that the transition back to citizen power should be between 18 to 24 months. That's about 2 months tops. And so that the military coup can hand over, back to a military rule. I remember ECOWAS, who has been trying to mediate the peace process there in Mali, give the junta a year tops for them to leave power to the civilians. And so, but the junta, remember the military junta, they had asked for a 3-year transition period. And now the leaders of the movement, the protesters that saw Boubacar Keïta leave office, they are saying perhaps you can have between 18 to 24 months. I don't know if they will even listen to what other people are saying, these military officials there, or they were just a bunch of military men who were, power hungry, and so they were just waiting for an opportunity. From what I'm seeing, or from what what is happening now in Mali, Now you cannot say it was just about the army coming in and helping the people. After they removed President Boubacar Keïta, they went back and they say now they want to go and interrogate and try to rectify the wrongs that have been happening there in Mali from the foundations. How are they going to do that? And as we talked about here last week, I think that will involve even looking at the constitution and changing of the constitution and all those things. If you were to look at, the ills that have, begotten Mali from the foundations, I don't know how, I don't even know what they mean by that. So it appears these are just people who are waiting, to come in and seize power, and they're looking for an opportunity. Now they got a very wonderful opportunity, and then because the people were so disgusted by their president, so they didn't care who was there. As long as it was not Boubacar Keïta, and the army came in, and now they are taking advantage of the goodwill of the people and the support the people gave them at the start, and they think they want to stay there longer. 3 years is just too much. A country that has been under civilian rule for that long, after its independence, why should it go back, revert to military rule? So this is something that should make Malians very uncomfortable. This is something that should not be encouraged at all. And I think I've said that earlier, and I'm repeating it again. The protest movement there, the leaders, they are saying perhaps the military could take between 18 to 24 months to just put, structures in place. How are they going to do that? Because the military's job is not that. The military's job is not that at all. They should leave that to the civilians. If there's a need to correct or to have a new constitution that perhaps will address the issues and Mali as it is today, then that be it, and the Malians will decide on how they want to charter their future. But the military should not impose themselves there for another 3 years. Doing what? They're not even suggesting for them to have a transition, perhaps have a civilian side as it is in Sudan. And in Sudan, it's just a different situation between Sudan and Mali. We know in Sudan, former President Omar al-Bashir had been there for 30 years. The constitution had not been changed. They had not known democracy for that long. So it was under a strong military rule that backed the leadership of former President, Bashir there. So it's quite different. But here, Keïta came into power in 2013 after that coup that happened there in 2012, I think. So he's been serving within the terms. He's not he's not violating the constitution, of the state there in Mali. It's not like what Alassane Ouattara is trying to do there in Ivory Coast. So Keïta was actually within his term, part of the constitution there. So the terms and the things and perhaps and the situations there are different. Of course, the things that the protesters are bringing up, the insecurity, President Keïta's lack of, decisive, action and solution towards finding the runaway insecurity that have been brought about by the Tuaregs and other extremist group in the country. And I think the worst part, and I think I talked about it on this show when he even suggested that it was possible for him to have a roundtable with the extremist groups there and try to forge a way forward. And I thought that is just wrong. So those are things that are legitimate, that perhaps, should be addressed. But for now, the military to think that they want to stay there longer, they want to stay there for 3 years. Who knows? 3 years will come, and they might think, no, perhaps you just need to stay here, and Mali needs to be under military for forever, because power, we know, corrupts a lot. And who will be heading other important sectors there, who will be making the appointments, who will be deciding on what is happening in the country, how can they organize even for an election? I think the army there, it has done its duty. That was to remove, President Keïta. Now can they retreat back to the barracks as the army in Zimbabwe did when they removed President Robert Mugabe? I don't think there's any need even for them to stay there another 2 months. Let them give a way forward, have an election as soon as possible, so that Mali can go back to Malians who will decide on who they want to lead them and how they want to be led. And if at all they think they want something changed on how the country is run, they can do that through voting through a referendum, giving their views, and let them participate in how they want to be led. But for the army to impose itself the way it has, I don't think it's making sense at all. It has said it wants to be there for 3 years. ECOWAS told it you can only be there for a year. And now the June movement, the opposition movement who was organizing this protest, is saying the march you can be there is between 18 to 24 months. I don't know which is which. If you ask me, the army should not even be there over 2 months from now. There should be an election there, done very quickly, and power returned back to civilian and army. Go back to your army barracks and protect the country and the interests of the country from against external aggression. Majority, that is what the army does. And if the person who will be elected will not be working in line with the will of the people, you can come back and remove them again, go back to the army until Mali gets a right head of state. But you being there in control of Mali for the next 3 years, I think is a terrible idea. Who knows? There could be a revolt even within army itself, because not every army official there is happy that President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta was removed from power. And as much as he was removed, and we saw as if the army was speaking in one voice, there could be a section who feels, no, we should not be staying this long. Perhaps we just need to let the people decide. So they'll start even internal wrangles, and that will jeopardize even the peace there in Mali. So it's just a bad idea. All right. So now, Sudan's transitional government and rebel groups are expected, I think, by now they must have signed that peace deal to end the 17 years of conflict. And what really amazes me with this story is because President Salva Kiir of South Sudan is the one who has been mediating between these peace talks between Sudan and these rebel groups there in Sudan. And we know what is happening in South Sudan, and the President Salva Kiir has not really shown the kind of leadership he's showing in the mediation of finding a solution in Sudan. And the peace talks have been happening in Juba. All right, so this is what I've not been, understanding very well, because President Salva Kiir has not really shown very good will when it comes to finding his own solutions for his country there in South Sudan. But he's been very, very gracious and very, very intense, in finding a solution to Sudan, which I think is a good thing. But President Salva Kiir, please. Charity begins at home. You and Dr. Machar, who I have not heard from in a very long time. I don't know what's happening. People are now hiding in the cover of COVID-19. They're not meeting deadlines. Remember, President Salva Kiir was supposed to be, dissolving the parliament to pave way for new elections and all that. He has not done that. And so these are things that are urgent. These are things that are, if not taken care of, will jeopardize the whole peace process, the peace that is even elusive and still very fragile there in South Sudan, with the increased, reports of the communal clashes that are even happening between fractions of youth, and some of them even disappeared from the army camps with the guns, and now they've gone back to the villages and formed other small gangs there in the village, and now they have this high power, rifles there with them. So this is the peace and the security of South Sudan. South Sudan is something that has not been adequately addressed, and of course due to COVID-19, so nothing much has been happening there, and they're camouflaging behind it. But we see here talks to find a peaceful resolution for Sudan has been happening in Juba, and today the government of Sudan, led by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, are signing a peace deal with these rebels under the auspices of President Salva Kiir, who has been the one leading this mediation. I find it to be very ironic, to be honest with you. I find it, because the level of efforts that President Salva Kiir has been putting in these talks is quite impressive. Now, I wish he would put half of that to find a solution back at home in South Sudan, to reach out to Salva Kiir and other stakeholders there in South Sudan and find a solution. But when it comes to South Sudan, what you see a lot of times coming from President Salva Kiir and other stakeholders and Riek Machar, you find that they're just hardliners. They're just not even interested in finding a solution or a common ground for anything. But it's quite interesting there that President Salva Kiir has led a successful mediation, and now Sudan is looking at perhaps a peaceful future after the government signed an agreement with these holdout groups there. Of course, a few of them had initially boycotted these meetings, about the negotiations, but majority of them have come to the table and have agreed to work to find a working formula there with the president. Very well, I think it's time for me to go. All right, I will see you tomorrow with another round of news from across the continent there. Yeah, that story of between Nigeria and Ghana, as I said there, this is something that might not be ending anytime soon. Those two countries seems to be having very deep-seated problems there that they need to employ a lot of diplomacy to solve them. And yes, now the Nigerians are suffering there in Ghana, and now Ghana is standing its ground and it's saying all of these Nigerians that are being deported, a lot of them have been operating on fraudulent activities there in Ghana. They've been engaging in prostitution and armed robbery and all that, and these shops that are being closed is because some of these traders from Nigeria has been violating retail trade laws there in Ghana, including tax evasion, immigration offenses, and selling substandard products. I don't know. All right, it's a lot happening there. I think these two countries need to find a solution for that before this goes out of hand. And I would imagine that this will be a great opportunity for even ECOWAS to step in and try to solve a problem and try to even question Ghana, why it's even violating the rules that govern member states in ECOWAS in regards to the trade and the open borders and things like that. ECOWAS, please, can you organize some talks and mediate between these two countries, these two member states there in that West African blocks? Thank you so much for watching. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Have a very good afternoon. Let's meet you again tomorrow for more African news.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.